presidency turns out to be an illegitimate presidency, then wouldn't stand to follow that we need to have a special election? I don't know. So that's just a random thought that I'm having on this walk tonight. Wouldn't it mean that we need to hold a special election? Wouldn't it mean that any decisions that were made by this false president that was installed basically by Russia, if that's true, wouldn't that mean that any judges, any bills that he signed, anything would have to be overturned, changed back, and then I guess looked at again once the real president is elected through a real election? Just a thought. Also in that same vein, if any decisions that a false president had made would need to be overturned and or reconsidered by the real president and the real administration, then also any consideration of a Pence presidency would have to be out of the question, because he would be a false vice president, because the election by which he also was elected would be an invalid election where those results would all have to be overturned. So that would include really Pence as well. So it's going to be interesting. This is going to be a very interesting time in the next few months in the world. Sadly, no matter what happens, it's not going to reunite those children who were separated from their parents. And no matter who's elected, that time that was stolen from those children and from those families, that can never be repaid. So, as a society, we have to figure out to make that right. I have no answers for that one. These are things that I would wonder about any administration. I mean, it just happens to be the fact that this is, happens to be the most corrupt administration probably in the history of America. But it does bring up a lot of interesting questions. So just sort of in like a nonpartisan way, I want to have the conversation of just like, how do we deal with these things, no matter what party it is, no matter what side of the aisle that you're on. I actually just want to have the discussion of how do we come together? How do we make the country whole again? No matter who did what. How are people properly punished? Because that's going to have to happen. But then how do we just move on together as a nation? How do we rebuild? Because there's going to be a lot of rebuilding to do. And there's a lot of damage that has been done that we don't even know about yet. There's going to be damage that, there's a lot of damage that's yet to be surveyed. It's also making me think about all the money issues that are going to come up also, all the misappropriations of funds that are going to come up. And how does that ever get rectified either? I mean, the cost of what the children of those families are going to have to pay is not really you can't really calculate it. But even moving off of that subject, just the actual costs of this administration and what they've cost this country, even just in dollars and cents, how is that going to be calculated, and how is that going to be rectified as well?